Well, I appreciate everyone hopping on today. It's a pleasure to have you here. It's a pleasure to be able to help the community. I'm a big fan of Hub 101 and just the thought that, our little part of Southern California is not just a bedroom community, but it's something pretty big and it's getting bigger and it's going to help more communities other than us. So I'm more than happy to help that grow in any way that I can. And this is a extension of that. So as you have questions, we have a small enough group. You can go ahead and maybe filter them through Kristen, and we can answer questions at the end. And then, of course, if you have specific items that are specific to your business, we're happy to go over that as well. So let's go ahead and jump into the slide deck here. So, deconstructed marketing, initial steps to avoid long pitfalls. What does that really mean? Well, I have had the pleasure and the good fortune of people coming to me to just talk about marketing in general. And I've noticed that the same conversation happens again and again. Right? And it might not be something that happens so much in the Hub 101 community, because that's really what the community is for, right? Is to bring entrepreneurs together and to help them build what they're building. But if they don't have that kind of support, people who eventually make their way to me have made some fundamental mistakes by the time they get to me, and I can't always help them out of that hole, right? So to give you some examples, spotting a lemon, you fall to the highest level of preparation, as in you fall back to what you know. If you're an amazing baker and people keep telling you, you need to open a shop, that's fantastic. And hopefully you find success, but there's a big difference between being a baker and signing a lease and buying equipment and passing all of the things to make sure that the food service doesn't come after you and not getting sued and, and all the rest, right? When all you want to do is bake. So there's a big disconnect there, right? So again, you fall to the highest level of your preparation. What this seminar is really about is how to build that preparation around you before you start making these major marketing decisions that overall affect your entire business and vice versa, right? Some other personal experience that I've had, I recently met with a woman who used to run a major airline, and she wanted to switch gears and get out of the travel business, kind of. And so what she did is she opened a destination wedding business, which sounds amazing. And someone with that much experience, you'd think that wouldn't be an issue. But suddenly you sink your life savings into something and you haven't done any due diligence and things aren't working and you don't know why, right? The same thing could happen. I met another person recently who is starting a sustainable container business for beauty products, which is very interesting. And that person has put a lot of money into R&D, as in talking to friends and seeing, do you like the way that this packaging looks, right? But that person hasn't done any market research. They don't know if there is a market for what they have. They know that their friends like what they put together, but they don't know that they actually have a business. And yet they've hired an assistant and they've sunk a lot of money into it already, right? Another person even on this call, possibly, right, has a friend who started as an engineer and then went into party planning and then went into catering specifically to teachers. And all of those are great businesses. But again, if you're going to pivot that much under the same business moniker, again, that's a lot of resources. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of investment. It's a lot of energy that gets wasted as you make these iterations. So that's what we're trying to avoid. So why are these efforts not working, even though we're trying our best to make them work? Well, there's a lot of details, and it's easy to get lost in all of those details. You think, oh, I have to do all of the things. I have to do the social media. I have to do the TV. I have to go knocking door to door. I have to buy the lists so that I have the addresses of people to do direct mail. Or even if you're only focusing on any one of those channels, it's a ton of work. It's a ton of work just to grab the resources that we're talking about for those specific veins of either traditional or digital marketing, right? So there's all of that, just doing the gathering, just making the plans, just getting the details, right? And then the actual execution is its own barrel of monkeys, right? And then of course the expectation is I needed everything done yesterday. And maybe you are your own client, which can be harder or easier, right? Or you have another client who just doesn't understand, right? Either you're working as an independent contractor, or you are a marketing manager within an organization and you're having a hard time convincing some of the other people within your organization exactly what it is that you do. And if I'm speaking to you, you know that I'm speaking to you because you've certainly had trauma from that. So what are the elements of a typical marketing plan? You'll see all kinds of diagrams if you do a quick Google search on what a typical marketing plan would be. This is kind of an overview. There's no one single format. It's really going to depend on your business and your goals and your audience, which again is something that we're going to cover, and that's going to be an overarching theme throughout this presentation is your audience. You're always catering to your audience, right? But first and foremost, an executive summary, which you would actually write last, and that's going to encompass everything that you're doing in a very brief paragraph or so that you can put in front of your client or in front of your boss or in front of yourself if you need to be reminded of what it is you're doing in the big picture, right? And then you're going to get more granular from there, and that's actually where you start. So you're going to need a business overview, which is going to be what your offerings are, what your structure is, whatever your revenue features are, et cetera, et cetera. Then you're going to need an overall market analysis. You need to see what is the market share for this. There's a very cute story about the creator of the spicy Cheeto. I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look at that article, but I think he was actually the janitor, and then he started to do some product testing and he made the Cheetos very spicy, and then he went, he got a hold of maybe the CEO even. He brought him into a meeting and someone asked him, well, what's the market share? And he said, this much, which is fantastic, right? But you're going to need a little bit of a better answer in that case, right? So, and we'll go over exactly kind of what that means as we continue along. So then from there, from your overall market analysis of do I actually have a business? Is there room enough to grow in that business? Then you can look at your competitive advantage, right? What is my value proposition? Hopefully you've heard that terminology before, but essentially that means what sets me apart from everyone else? Why would you pick me over all the other competitors that are out there? And that is huge. And if you don't have a very concise answer for that, then that's something that you should definitely consider, because that's going to be one of the keystones of not only your marketing plan, but your business as a whole, right? A SWOT, maybe you've heard that term before. I'm not huge on SWOTs myself, but that is one of many different diagrams that you could potentially create. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. There's lots of business manuals and things that you can go over and take a look if that's how you want to structure your overall business analysis. But there are many tools and many ways, and you would utilize whatever works best for you and your situation. Then a competitive analysis. So you know what your competitive advantages are, hopefully, but now you've got to take a really hard look at your competitors. And we're going to take a big look into exactly what that means, because that can be an extremely robust effort. At one time, I've had 10 interns under me, and I kept them all extremely busy with just competitive research, because that is something you need to be on all the time. You need to keep an eye on your competitors. You need to have a historical documentation of your competitors. To what extent, again, it just kind of depends on your business. Some people can just take a quick look every day and kind of have it in their mind what's going on, and others are going to need a very robust inventory. So again, that just depends on you and your situation. Your target audience, your insights of that audience, any segmentation of that audience. Again, this is going to be something that we explore a little more in depth as we continue along. Your objectives, what does that mean? What it is you are actually trying to do in the course of your marketing plan. And again, that doesn't mean get impressions in front of people. And maybe it does, but you need to have a much more granular approach to that and the rationale behind that. And again, we're going to get to that. The objectives lead into your strategies, which lead into all of your tactics. And tactics and strategies are not the same thing, which can be a hard lesson for people to learn as well, but we're going to explore that a bit more. And then finally, you need to actually measure. You need to look at your KPIs. You need to know what KPIs you're going to be using to figure out if you've reached a milestone of success. KPI, of course, is a key point indicator. So again, just what kind of, are you going to look at analytics? Most likely you are, especially if you're in the digital world, which most likely you are, right? And then figure out exactly what do I need to look at? Because if you're not looking at the right KPIs, you are looking at the wrong picture entirely, right? So these are all of the typical elements of a marketing plan. As you can see, that's quite robust, which is why at the very top you have an executive summary to put it all together and to make it easy to digest for someone that maybe doesn't need all of these details, while you or your core team may be deep into all of these details as you conduct all of the work that goes into building a marketing plan, right? Now, what is this? You also, on top of everything that you've just seen, you have to keep the funnel in mind. What is the funnel? The funnel is the funnel. Of course, it's the funnel. The funnel is your conduit of leads leading to sales, or whatever your end point is, right? So if your funnel starts off very big, how many people know that I exist? Is there some general awareness about where I am? And then it goes into consideration and education, a little bit of engagement. Now that you know that I exist, what are your thoughts about me? Do you want to get to know me better? Do you not, right? Then you go into conversion, right? Oh, you do like me. Oh, you want to buy from me. Fantastic. Now you're in that conversion stage. And then maybe most importantly, again, depending on your business model, is the retention stage. Is it churn and burn, meaning they buy once and they're done? Or can you rinse and repeat and keep that cycle continuing so that your business continues, and then continue to iterate and pivot along the way, making more inroads for products and solutions, letting your business continue to grow, right? So between this and this, it's a lot to deal with. So let's figure out exactly how to do that. All right. So first and foremost, I would say, again, a little self-reflection. If you do have the good fortune to be someone who is in a position to start your own business, don't make some of the mistakes that I've mentioned before, right? The way to avoid those pitfalls is to be very honest with yourself and to ask yourself these basic business questions, right? What is the business model itself? Is it business to business? Is it business to consumer? Is it hybrid? Do I have inroads to make both of those items happen at the same time? If I do, you have to realize that those are two totally different audiences, and that you need to build different marketing plans to approach both of those audiences, which is a lot of work. So you have to be honest with yourself about that bandwidth as well, right? How will the business be funded? How will it sustain revenue? Are you putting your life savings into this, which I've seen? Or do you have an investor, which could cut off funding at any time? Is this crowdsourced? What kind of promises have you made that you need to fulfill either to yourself or to your stakeholders? What are the business objectives? Again, what is the ultimate end goal? Right? It's a very different business proposition. It's a very different way to structure your business. If you want to create a business that's going to last for a decade, that you want to continually be a part of, right? Or if you want to create something immediately and then sell it immediately. Maybe you're some sort of serial entrepreneur, right? Totally different business structure, totally different budgets associated with both of those. And you need to know that up front, what your end goal is. And I can't stress that enough, right? So that's the what. What about the how? So your inventory of offerings. What is it that you have to sell? What is your full roster of products or services? Is it products? Is it services? Is it both, etc.? What's the core offering? Because that is going to speak to your core audience. Maybe you have 100 different SKUs. Hopefully they all have something similar in common, or maybe you are an Amazon seller and you just sell everything, or an eBay seller and you just sell everything, right? Again, that's a totally different marketing strategy. Could there be a marketing strategy there? Absolutely. But it wouldn't be robust. It would be quite a bit different and very tailored to you in that instance, right? Is there a roadmap for iteration and innovation? Again, is this something that you are going to grow with, or is this a singular pursuit of only one sort of business? And if that's the case, you need to keep an eye out again on your competitors. If you don't evolve, you die out potentially, right? Unless you can really differentiate yourself and keep that differentiation, a new word, together, right? All right, and then finally the why. Again, there's that word, value proposition. What is it that sets your business apart? What is it that sets you apart in the business that you're creating? How will it compete in the marketplace? Again, what is the market share? What can you expand on in terms of that, right? And do it all in a specific timeline, because you may evolve. Your value proposition may evolve. All of these things may evolve. So it's important to not just do this once, but do this continually in your business to make sure that everything's on the same page all the time and that the expectations haven't shifted, right? So everything that we just went over, is that even marketing? Right? It is, because it all directly relates to marketing, right? And that's the seminar that I wanted to present. I kept having these conversations with these entrepreneurs who kept coming to me with all of these marketing questions. But at that point, it was really a business question, right? And the two are inherently interlaced. If you don't know what it is that you're selling, and you don't know what the product, the value proposition is of your product, you don't know who your audience is. And if you don't know your audience, then how can you market to that audience, right? It's all very much connected. You have to align your positioning across your organization. You have to know, am I able to do all of this myself? Again, that baker scenario of, I just want to bake cookies, I don't want to deal with everything else. Then you're going to have to hire people, right? So if you're going to have to hire people, then you need to keep in mind, again, your budgets and everything else to make that happen. So it could be a singular enterprise like that, or it could be you within a much larger organization, and you're banging your head against a wall because you realize you're just never on the same page with everyone else, right? They tend to think about marketing last, unfortunately, right? You have to think about your competitors. Again, are my competitors going to pass me by? Who are my competitors? Am I continually keeping an eye out for new people in the marketplace who may, usurp my my prowess at the moment? And then again, your objectives and your tactics, which again, we're going to get into that in a moment. All of this directly relates to all of these items right here. I hope that that is clear. And again, if you have questions about this, we will talk about that toward the end. Give me a little bit of grace as we continue along. All of this helps build into the prioritization of scale. Once again, depending on if you have a business to business and a business to consumer, you're going to need two different marketing plans, which means you're going to need two different marketing budgets. Right? Again, I was working for an entrepreneurial business who told me that they wanted a business for 10 years, and then they turned around a month later and said they wanted to sell it in 6 months. Well, they gave me $100,000 budget at first, which would have been fine to start off for the first year based on everything that they wanted to do. And then if they suddenly wanted to pivot into something they wanted to sell within the next 2 years, we needed a $250,000 budget. Again, based on what it was that they wanted to do and what the sale that they wanted to get on their business, right? So you need to have all of that information up front so that you know what your scale capacity is. So what can you, or what can I rather give you that is actually practical, right? A lot of seminars, you kind of listen to them and you're like, yeah, that sounds great, but I didn't actually learn anything. So I'm going to try to give you some practical things that you can play with. Let's start with this. Is this practical? I would love a little interaction if anyone wants to come off of mute at the moment. When you see this 8 clever moves, when you have $1,000 in the bank, and then you see this picture, what are your thoughts? I see some smiles. I see some confusion. I can't tell. It's a weird picture. I mean, the headline is very clear. The picture, it looks like it could belong in like a comedy club or something, right? Or a movie, or et cetera, et cetera. And then you have a lot of reactions at the bottom, most of which are laughing signs. But again, you wouldn't really know that unless you dug into this ad, which we're actually going to do, right? Is this ad effective? Is it not effective? You could make the personal assumption and say, no, it's not. It doesn't make any sense. Or you could take a closer look and see the amount of social interactions that it's had. And you could say, oh, maybe it's effective based on that. But you don't know how long this ad has been running. Maybe it's been up there for years and it only has 1,000 likes and 76 shares, et cetera, et cetera. So the point is, you really don't know until you start to dig in, and you really can't trust your own thoughts until you dive into the data. And that's something that is very hard for a lot of clients to understand. And maybe you're in that situation. I've talked to a lot of frustrated marketing managers who have joined a business that has done things very specifically in a very specific way for a long time. And then they start to see fancy items, right? Bright and shiny things that they think they should be reaching for. So they tell their marketing manager, just go do that, right? But there's no analytics behind it. There's nothing about it that will make you successful if you run down that road without setting some expectations and doing some due diligence, right? And some of you are smiling because you've been in that situation before. So let's see what we can do about it. So let's start with the competitive analysis, right? And you'll notice a lot of the words that we just talked about on these last slides are what show up here as well. Because you need to understand about your competition, what their business model is, what their inventory of offerings are, the value proposition, the branding, the target audience, the tactics. Are they digital? Are they traditional? Are they both? What are they doing, right? What is their scale? Are we talking about the 800-pound gorilla, right? Do they have an unlimited budget? Or is this the mom and pop shop next door that I just need to do a little bit better than, or support as part of my community, right? What kind of incentives are they offering, and what is the response to those incentives, right? So all of that is going to take a lot of work, and it's important to dig in to all of those items, and that takes a lot of work, right? So your typical media mix investigation could be all of the items, or it should be from a digital perspective, all of the items that you see here, and it could even be more robust depending on your business, right? So we want to take a look at the keywords. We want to take a look at the owned marketing. That means the on-page marketing, the marketing that that you actually control in terms of what's directly on your website, if you have one, if you have a digital business, right? Your walled garden, what does that mean? That means all of the social media that is on other platforms, and yet you are the admin too, right? So even though it's owned by another platform, you're the one who is creating the atmosphere within those pages and bringing the people in to be fans, et cetera, et cetera. And then your content strategy, right? If you do have this walled garden of inventory that you need to populate, then you need to start thinking, well, what is that going to be? What is that going to look like? And that is a huge task, which we can talk about in just a bit as well. What else? You need to look at the paid marketing, the SEM, the market, what you're actually paying for in terms of keywords. Look at paid social, and then you look at partnerships and features and reach or anything else. There's a lot of ways to spend your money in marketing, so it's a good idea to take a look at all of it that is available to you. So let's look at what we have here. Email, social media, obviously, SEO, SEM, if there's any blogs, the actual website itself, any loyalty program and lead nurturing, which may or may not present itself in the email, any video content, any sort of content. You want to be aware of all of those items, all of the above. So let's take a look at what that actually means. If you give me a moment, I am going to get out of this and find here we go. All right, so for instance, if we go to Facebook, so that ad, that weird ad that I showed you, right, it's from this company right here. So we can go to their page and we can look at the content that they have right now, and we see, so they've got almost 90,000 likes, quite a few follows, right? A few more follows than likes, which is fine. But then you look at the inventory, or you look at the reaction, the number of reactions to the actual content, even the pinned content. This is from, what, a week ago? It's not that high. It's not a business that you would think would have a lot of interactions anyway. So that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's good to just kind of take a cursory look and see, okay, they're not really getting that much. Maybe Facebook isn't really their platform. You could look at that as well. What we're going to look at on Facebook, though, and this is a conversation to have as well, newer companies may be less inclined to utilize Facebook, but Facebook is still the biggest social media platform at the moment, right? It is skewing to an older audience. So maybe in this case, that's not the target audience, right? But again, it's just something that you need to keep in mind. If it's not the target audience, then maybe some of their commercials need some work. All right, so if you go to the business page, and you go past about, and you go to page transparency, and you click see all, then you can actually go down and see ads from this page. And when you click this, you can see all of the ads that this company has published on Facebook. So what do you do with this information? You're not going to get the analytics from this. They're not going to hand you everything, right? But again, it just lets you see, okay, well, the ad that I just saw looks quite a bit different than these ads, right? So it seems that maybe they have separate target audiences that they're going for. So they have separate ads that they're utilizing in order to attract those audiences. So they're going to have different personas, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. Maybe they gave up on that ad and switched directions entirely. Maybe they are evolving in terms of their marketing. You could take a look and see if you can find that ad and see if it's active. And that will actually tell you, here it is. This is active. So they're still utilizing this. But this, again, looks quite a bit different than some of these. So I would say that they have different personas that they're actively targeting. Can you think of other use cases for this particular trick, if you want to call it, where you can go in and just kind of get an overall inventory of what this potential competitor to you has been doing? But some of it you can glean just by looking at it, right? Like you can see, all right, their target audience, at least in this vein for these ads, is younger. So we know that they're looking for a younger target audience. These look like stock images to me, right? None of them are very specific to this particular business. No one's there holding a sign that says financebiz.com, right? So they're using a lot of stock images. So they're not spending a ton of money on things that are, on a personal photographer for this brand. So this is just a good way to go in and kind of see what your competitors are doing, right? Also, let me pull up this, because it's not just going to each individual page that's interesting, but you can also go directly to the Facebook ad library, which is here, right? And then from here, you can actually type in, you'll notice if you hit category, there's some very specific categories. That's because for housing and employment and credit and election and politics, obviously, there are some very specific parameters that need to be followed in terms of marketing. But everything else is essentially fair game, right? So again, if you have, let's see, select a category, all ads. And then let's say you're that baker, right? So I don't know, you make Christmas cookies. Let's see if anything comes up. Here we go. So you can actually see, this would be a way for you to potentially discover competitors that you didn't even know that you had, right? I probably wouldn't want to go as granular as Christmas cookies, right? Because you're going to get a lot of stuff from that. But I mean, if you're in, I don't know, teaching, or if you're in some sort of manufacturing business, consumer packaged goods, and you have a specific item that you are selling, maybe vegan cookies, et cetera, it would give you a pretty good inventory and an idea about different things that are out there. So I'll make sure that I share this URL. This is open access, something for you to take a look at. All right. What else? So things like keywords. From here, you'd want to go into incognito mode. What that's going to do is it's going to take out your direct browsing information, all the cookies that you've collected in the course of your own browsing for that day or that week or that year, however often you clear out your cookies. It's going to take that out of the equation as you essentially get a new slate to Google. I'm using DuckDuckGo, but you want to use Google to get an idea of your competitors, right? So if I look at, what is this business called? financebiz.com, financebuzz.com. Okay. All right. So you may have, whoops, where'd you go? All right, yeah, I mean, just putting it in here. Hopefully everything that comes up is directly, oh, scam detector, that's not good. That's not what you want to see when you type in your business. So there's a couple of things I want to showcase here, right? So number one is whenever I do keyword research, I do a branded keyword research exercise, and then I do keywords that describe the business, that kind of exercise as well. You can see from a branded keyword exercise that this business might have some issues. right? If scam alert is coming up on the first page of Google, they might have some work to do. Even if it's not something that's inherently bad, someone who sees scam in general is not going to appreciate that, right? So you want to do a branded keyword research, just kind of see what's out there. As you're doing a branded keyword research, and again, you're going to want to do this from Google, and you're going to want to do it incognito, which I'm not going to do, but you should do it. Because you're going to want to go to news so that you see not only what the business is trying to put out directly, but also, you know, what media outlets have anything to do with that branded keyword as well. What does this do? Again, this kind of gives you an idea of the scale of your competitor. How big is their influence in this overall media world, right? Are people talking about them? Are they not talking about them? And then it also gives you an edge on PR. Hire a good PR agency is like $10,000 or more a month, right? It kind of starts there. You can do a lot of the heavy lifting on the PR side yourself by going to news and copying down all of these outlets and then reaching out to those outlets, and hopefully with something that makes sense, some sort of a PR wire that makes sense to you and that they'd actually want to run with. That's where the beauty of a PR agency comes into play, is they typically already have those contacts. But if you're on a budget and you can't do that, this is kind of a hack to be able to make that happen for you. All right, so that would be a branded keyword research. Now, what about a regular keyword research? So there's a couple of things to do here. First and foremost, I'd want to take a look at their content. And if they have actual, I don't really want to click on anything on this site because it's a little scammy, but you could go through here and you could click on it, and then you take a look at the actual offerings of the content. You do that on a number of pages, and maybe you make a word cloud, right? And then from that word cloud, you can come up with different keywords that they may advertently or inadvertently be targeting based on just their content. You could do that. You could also do a right click and view page source. And this will tell you, I mean, if you're a developer, this will tell you more, but if you're not, it also just gives you an idea. Was this WordPress? Is this built on a much smaller server, some sort of a business that maybe SEO isn't their top of mind concern, right? Are there actual keywords in here? So you can do a search. The SEO on this page is not great since the keywords aren't actually highlighted for Google to find. Their H1 tags don't exist in a proper way. So you know that this site was kind of put together kind of fast. All right, and then also look at this. This is interesting. So again, I'm not familiar with this company, but I would assume that something like NerdWallet would be potentially a direct competitor, right? Because it's kind of the same thing, financial news, et cetera, et cetera. So you'd go here and you'd say, all right, NerdWallet. I'd also click on the ad and the home page because they might be different pages. It might be connected to a landing page, which would be interesting to look at as well. So if I look at NerdWallet, what do you see right away? That the UI is fairly similar, right? So I would assume that NerdWallet is older and that Finance Buzz took a look and decided to make their own tiles, which is what you have here. So maybe there's some best practices that's specifically going on with this industry, which is something to look at as well. If you have major competitors, you can bet that they've spent major money on UX design, and you can steal that design more or less without having to pay for it as much, right? Because you're just doing your competitive analysis, and that's going to give you all of that insight. So when I do a competitive analysis, I showed you a couple of items, but let me show you a couple more. Here is, I can't show you the client that this is for, but here's an inventory that I did initially for an investor deck, right? And so this was a part of the investor deck for this client. It included a branded keyword analysis, competitive website analysis, where I went to each website and documented and diagrammed every page, right? What are the calls to action? What are the pictures like? What can I glean just by looking at the website like we did just now, right? What kind of best practices may be in order? What sort of themes do I detect or patterns, right? A site map can be super helpful. If you're just getting started, if you're just putting a website together, sometimes it's hard to figure out, well, how do I actually want to structure my website, right? What are the major pages that I need? How should those pages be organized? And you can glean that from your competitors, potentially see what they have going on. Off-page offerings, we focused on Facebook in this case, but we also did Instagram and a few other things, right? And then a content competitive view. So this was actually a calendar and a persona map where we looked at, well, how often do people post? And then looking at the audiences who are responding to the posts for all of these competitors. What does that audience profile actually look like, right? So a lot of work went into this, and the investors ended up giving them the money, right? So that's a happy path. But it's because there was a lot that went into it. And you can see all of these slide decks are like over 100 slides long. That's where those 10 interns came in. So don't be afraid to really dive into this. It's just so important to get it done. All right. So let me get out of this and let me get out of this. And let's get back, into our PowerPoint. Is this where we were? This is where we were. Okay. No, this is not where we were. This is where we were. Okay. All right. So from here, we talked a lot about, we've still got about 15 minutes. We talked a lot about the competitive analysis, which again, I hope that you just see how robust that should really be and how much time that should really take and how much information. I hope it's clear to you the implication of what you can learn from all of that information, right? You take all of that and then you look at your target audience. Again, this relates back to the business as a whole. What are my products? What is the value proposition? Who is that most valuable for? Do I have more than one target audience? Usually you want to create a persona, right? What does that mean? If you've never heard that term before, a persona is where you take a stock photo of who you envision your target audience to be that encompasses that demographic, right? What is their age? What is their gender, their income, their education, their job, their geographics, right? All of that is going to factor into your marketing because you need to be able to be where your audience is. And all of this demographic information is going to factor into where that audience will most likely be found, right? The psychographics, what is their lifestyle, their interests, their opinions, their activities? Once again, where are they most likely to encounter my brand? I need to know that. So I need to know them. What are their behaviors, their needs, their pain points, their occasions, their places in that funnel, right? What does that mean? So I know that I'm selling things, I'm selling lesson plans to teachers, great, right? But how does that relate back to my value proposition? If you can align your value proposition with your persona's pain point, as in this person really needs to get this specific item done, right? I'm not an expert on lesson plans, but some to the extent of no good lesson plans really exist about the new ways of teaching math or whatever, right? Then maybe you could fill the void in that market until the rest of the field catches up to you. So how do you craft this persona? There's a lot of tools online. I don't love most of them. I would say go talk to people, right? Craft kind of an idea of what you think your target market is, and then actually go find people that align to that target market and see if they have any interest in your product. And that takes time, right? But again, it's better than sinking your life savings into something that you haven't tested yet. All right. So remember, no one follows a brand so they can see price. No one wants to just see ads, right? They want to see things that are important to them. They want to be entertained. They want to be enlightened. They want to be educated. They want their pain points to be fixed. So how do you do that? You need to go talk to them. You need to figure it out. And then you need to diagram those personas, and you need to aggressively target those personas. But how do you do that? Okay, so now you know who your competitors are, you know who you want to target, but now you actually have to say something, and that takes a lot of work too, right? So how do I bring my value proposition to life? What is the conceptual space that you want to own within your persona's mind? What is the brand equity that you want to hold there, right? It's not just that point in the funnel where they're aware and they've considered, but after that consideration, they've decided that they like me, right? How do you do that? And that's just a matter of aligning your voice with what you think will be most appealing to your audience, but it's also true to your brand, right? Or maybe you just want to be true to your brand and see what audience comes to you, in which case, again, it all depends on your business model and how much time and resources you have to wait in the meantime.
You mentioned having 3 to 4 personas. If we have personas, won't that convolute our messaging? For example, we have one statement on our website for persona 1, and then another statement for persona 2, etc. Seems confusing. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say the general rule is that 80% of your core business should be directed at your core persona, right? But what does that mean? Well, that goes back to that initial list with the swan, right, of self-reflection. Is there room within your business model to grow? There's going to be surprises. You're going to have surprise audiences that pop up, and you need to be ready for those audiences, right? Maybe you think right now that your core group is, men between the ages of 24 and 44, right? But it may surprise you. Look at My Little Ponies, right? You think of that target audience, and you think, it's going to be girls between the age of, 3 and 12. I don't know. And then there's a whole brony subculture, which is not as creepy as you would think, right? Potentially. Again, I haven't watched that documentary, but it's something to think about. Kristen, you can feel free to take this out of the, of the recording. We don't need to talk about bronies, but overall, that's a great question, right? The answer to that, it's not really about inclusion, right? It's not really about thinking, oh, I need to, the culture right now is asking for me to be more open. It's more about your core business. It's more about what else could my business appeal to? As I iterate, as I grow, what sort of products could branch out into other things? And how open am I to learning about it? And then your point about the website, right? Where if you have 3 or 4 different personas, you need to cater to each of those. It's more about as you advertise or as you reach out, where are those people going to be, right? If your core demo is, males between the ages of this and this, then maybe you want to be on Twitch, right? Or maybe you want to be, wherever you're going to find that specific demographic. So then 80% of your budget should go toward that persona in those areas. But if you have a little bit more, then you can start to A/B test into these other potential demos to see if you find a pocket of something that's interesting, right? Again, it just depends on the business. If you want to focus on one persona and really build that out, great. I would suggest at least a couple, then they don't have to be extremely diverse personas, right? It can't, you could still have a male target audience, right? But maybe it's male college students, right? And then you also have, well, maybe this is my college student plan, and this is my trade school plan, right? Essentially the same demo, but they have different lifestyles, they have different psychographics, they have different priorities, right? They have different philosophies, obviously, and you're going to have to reach them in different ways. All right, so here, proactive PR. Your company this is a pitfall that I've seen quite often, right? Is you don't really have a plan for talking to these people. You haven't really put a lot of stock into your overall branding, right? And some simple ways to align on that is to ask yourself, to ask your business, how does my company say hello, right? What is my company voice? How does my company say thank you? How does it celebrate? How does it apologize? Right? Things happen. How are you going to respond to it? And getting ahead of that and knowing your brand voice ahead of time is going to save you a lot in the long run, right? How does my brand respond to celebrity attention? I just recently worked with a company who had a major celebrity shout out, and they totally fumbled it. Because they didn't have a plan, right? You're going to see that in just a moment as well. So even ask, like, if my business were its own persona, would I want to hang out with it, right? What does it do for a living? Where did it grow up? How old is it? Because all of that is going to factor in to the kind of personality that brand has and the voice that's going to be true to that personality and that's going to resonate with your audience and that's going to bring forth your value proposition. Make sense? All right. All right, so here's a couple of examples, right? You have Oscar Mayer. Call us the next time you want to ride a wiener into space. This is very on brand, right? They're very funny. You know, the Wienermobile is so random that they can be a little bit random. That's their brand voice. And so they can be very on target for very timely items. It works for them. Red Lobster was not prepared when Beyonce famously or infamously referenced them in her best-selling album of all time, right? So what did they do? Like a week later, I think, they responded to her shout out with this. And it's, you can Google that. It's like down in history as one of the worst responses ever in marketing, right? So you need to be prepared. What happens if tomorrow Beyonce writes a song about me? Why not? Think about it, right? How would you respond? All right, so how do you put all of that together? We've got 3 minutes. I think that we can do it. So here we go. Objectives, strategies, and tactics. So these are 3 different things. Objectives are stated, measurable targets. And they need to be aligned with the rest of your roadmap and all of the information that you've just gathered, and take this into effect as much as you can for that moment. This is a very busy slide, but here I've kind of put everything together, right? So as we align to the funnel, again, right? Awareness, consideration, eventually buying, et cetera, et cetera. So here's the very top of the funnel, awareness. I want my objective to align with the funnel. So the example here is I want to expand total awareness across my target demo, right? This is pretty broad, but that's fine. That gives me a clear picture of what it is I want to do. Expand total awareness across my target demo. So what does that tell me? It tells me my strategy for that is going to be to create a robust inbound marketing content, and I'm going to invest in content creation. So that gives me exactly what I need to do in order to hit my overall objective, right? I want to increase. I tried to make this very broad because there's a lot of different types of business here, right? So the objective itself can be fairly broad, but again, it needs to be specific in that I'm targeting awareness, I'm targeting my demo, I want to see numbers expand. That's pretty specific. Strategy, how am I going to do it? In this case, the strategy, again, I'm going to create inbound marketing. I'm going to expand my inbound marketing through content creation. And that immediately tells me that I need to put my marketing budget or my time bandwidth into content creation, right? And then from there, what are the actual tactics? So what does that actually mean, right? It's easy to say, I'm going to do this, but then you don't make an actual plan to get it done. So tactics in this case would be to customize content to primary demo channels. And Max, maybe this gets to the core of what you're talking about. So specifically on page, in order to reach my target demo, let's say that my target demo is male, they're very interested in webinars, and it's a business-oriented male demographic, right? Going to be interested in webinars on this particular website, maybe LinkedIn, something like that. I also want to activate an email campaign for my existing subscribers, and I want to post webinar feedback and content hosting on the website itself, right? So these are my tactics of what I'm actually going to do. So what does that tell me? Got to put my budget into content creation. I'm specifically going to create a webinar. It's going to live on the website. I'm going to advertise that webinar via email campaigns. I'm also going to post webinar feedback content hosting on websites. I'm going to make sure that I have some sort of a content loop after the fact to highlight this content that I'm continually starting to put on the website. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it's planning for the future and then also planning for the now. So that's on page. Now off page, how am I going to reach my target audience? Again, I know because I've already done the research that my target audience mostly aligns with LinkedIn. So I'm going to put advertising dollars specifically toward LinkedIn. My target audience also likes medium.com. So I'm going to spend money on LinkedIn advertising, and I'm going to create an article on medium.com and try to get hype around that. And then after the fact, I'm going to utilize YouTube to echo that content again and again, right? So that is a concise marketing plan that is aligned to your target audience. It's manageable. It tells you exactly where your money is going to go, and it aligns with the funnel, right? And then you'd fill in the blanks here, in terms of, well, what's the voice of my webinar, right? Well, it's going to follow through on my branding voice, which I'm already aware of. Is it going to be buttoned up? Is it going to be funny? What's it going to be, et cetera, et cetera. So you're not scrambling at the last minute. I just need to put something in front of my boss and I have to get them to sign off on it, right? So KPIs, so you need to align all of these items, your overall objective, your strategy, your tactics, and you can find very handy templates for these items online. So go ahead and do that for yourself, whatever's most comfortable for you. Just make sure they align to the funnel, and then make sure that you have KPIs attached to them, each one of your tactics, so that you know whether or not you were successful at the end of your campaign, right? So what specifically are we going to look at? Well, we're going to look at the email open rate. We're going to look at new subscribers that are directly related to the webinar, right? I'm going to look at, after my paid LinkedIn campaign, I'm going to look at exactly how many impressions I got and exactly how many signups that I got, and then compare that conversion rate to see if it was successful or not, if I should put more money there in the future or not, if it needs to be tweaked. I'm going to specifically look at social media. I'm going to look at the web traffic that came to my website from LinkedIn, right? It's not just if someone looked at it, it's not just if they signed up, but did I generate interest directly from LinkedIn, and I can see if the traffic came from there, right? Because it's another kind of inadvertent advertising that's happening just by getting your name in front of them. I'm going to look at the traffic that came over from Medium. I'm going to look obviously at the overall sign up numbers, right? Post webinar, I'm going to look at any YouTube impressions. Which webinars were, in retrospect, which webinars, if this is a series, were my most popular webinars. And then I'm going to double down on that sort of content because it appeals to my target audience, right? I'm going to look at SEO and continual on-page traffic. So my webinar, pieces of it live on YouTube, but also the actual webinar lives on my website. So how popular is that web page? And again, it's going to funnel back into my overall marketing plan, which is continually being tweaked and aligned to everything that we went over in this quick little overview here. And what's really important to remember is that as a marketer, you never hit it and forget it, right? You are constantly tweaking. That's the whole point. You're constantly looking at your KPIs in relation to your objectives, your strategies, your tactics, and you're constantly pivoting so that you find that sweet spot of the best ROI available to you. And that is it. So we're a couple minutes over. I'm happy to stay on for anyone who has any questions. I really appreciate your time. I hope you learned something, or at least were able to sit through it.